For cheap gold, items and other boosts for Diablo 4, visit aoeah.com. Check out the link in the description, you get 3% off with the code ARIAD. Hello and welcome to the latest info on Diablo 4. In yesterday's campfire stream, some more important changes were revealed, which I would like to summarize for you again. Last time we learned about the new season content, general patch changes and quality of life updates. Today it's about changes to the items and classes. The developers have followed a 5-point strategy, the elemental resistances should get reworked, the uniques should become more interesting, class improvements for more variety, and the damage calculation should also be changed, so that critical strike damage and damage to vulnerable is no longer so high above everything else. Some players will be worried about their builds now, but there should not be a disaster like on the last changes with the damage, because the 5th point says the changes should be a bonus and not a malus. So let's have a look at the implementations. Currently, resistance bonuses are calculated inverse multiplicative, which leads to the fact that further bonuses bring less and less. The resistances have no limit and can theoretically grow infinitely high, but practically it is even very difficult to reach 60 to 70%. In addition, the armor value protects against both physical damage and elements, which makes resistances on items even more superfluous. After the upcoming patch it will look different. Resistances will add up again and there will be a base cap of 70%, that you can increase up to 85% with some new bonuses. So it will basically be like in Diablo 2, just with different caps. The armor value will only have an effect against physical damage in the future, but rings will increase all resistances just like amulets. Further bonuses will be obtained by items, paragon system or skill tree. Now about the unique items. The problem here is that many unique items are quite useless and the player is unhappy about the drop even if the item is intended for his build. So a lot of uniques will get reworked. We'll take a look at a few examples in a moment. Basically, there will be unique aspects as well as unique affixes that don't appear on other items. And there will be no more slot rules for the affixes either. The values of all possible affixes can also roll higher than on comparable items. Here you can see some examples. Fists of Fate get damage boost on lucky hit instead of life, and with Shadow Grip we see that the Shadow Clone damage is increased. Hellhammer is supposed to give ranks on upheaval and damage to burning enemies will be increased. An Ancient's Wrath will give a damage boost when using Steel Grasp instead of slowing enemies. There is also a very important change in the loot tables. Of course, all unique items can still drop anywhere they could drop before, but at the 5 new bosses you will find certain items more often, so you can farm many unique items much more targeted. Nothing sucks more than when you just can't find the item you need for your build because RNG says no. Duriel will be very interesting, because there we can find all the uber unique items like Shaco and Grandfather. Briefly about the class changes. On the Barbarian, the Paragon boards are too weak, especially the legendary nodes, so they will change some points here. And the damage while berserking will be a multiplicative bonus in the future. Berserking damage will be an extra damage bucket just like crit damage and damage to vulnerable, so it will be pretty strong. The aspect for the Hota Barb will also be improved, the damage bonus will then apply to both, the Strike and the Quake. For the Sorceress, Incinerate is supposed to get better by channeling up the damage faster, and the Frozen Orb enhancement will do additional explosions on elite enemies. Since almost every rogue build uses the base skill Puncture, all other basic attacks will be buffed with the patch, and the passive skill Impetus will be slightly improved and apply to all non-basic skills. On the Druid, the Ravens will get more damage and critical strike chance, and Rabies should get more damage too, and also some better area damage by spreading faster. The Necromancer's minions will be strengthened, so all summoners should be happy. The Codebringer aspect will also be improved, so that all skeleton mages can cast the Blizzard, and shields will soon have an armor value. Now to the changes in the damage calculation. Right now, the critical strike damage and damage to vulnerable affixes are supremely powerful. Both are each an extra multiplier in the calculation chain. So the strategy in most builds is just to get a lot of critical strike damage and damage to vulnerable by the affixes, because these two factors are multiplied at the end. These damage buckets will get limited. Vulnerable damage to 20%, crit damage to 50%, and overpower damage also to 50%. Everything above the cap value comes into the additive damage bucket, where all the other affixes like core skill damage or damage to close enemies work. So that means you won't want to have quite as much critical strike damage and vulnerable damage on your gear in the future. When you have already reached the maximum, other damage affixes are often more useful because they roll higher. These caps are set a bit too low in my opinion, but if it should be too drastic, this can still be readjusted. But in general, the damage calculation of crit and vulnerable damage remains multiplicative. Because some builds will become a little weaker, also the monster's power will be decreased a bit. So ideally every build should still work as well as before, but all the builds that play without critical strike and vulnerable damage get boosted in comparison. In addition, the characters should also be stronger in fact of the previously discussed changes, such as stronger paragon nodes and aspects. Finally, there should also be 2 new glyphs per class for the paragon system. Those were the main news about the upcoming patch, and these days I will present to you a very funny build that may even benefit from the changes, and that is the bowling bear. I say goodbye, take care, and may the loot be with you.
Follow me. Thank you. Goodbye.